Hey, I'm Tom. That over there's Mike. And people often say that I'm very hardcore. Like, look at me. And that's why I believe that I am the proper orator to bring you a brief history of the WCW Hardcore Title. Now, keep in mind while this video is going on that everything I'm about to tell you, everything I'm about to say, happens over the course of a less than 2-year time span. This title did not last very long. It came around at the butt end of WCW's history, but so much happened. So much that I'm gonna take 15 minutes of your time to talk about it. So we gotta go back to the year 1999. We were doing it all for the nookie. Men were very angry at women in society and all sorts of things that they had to scream about. Wrestling got a bit rough around the edges. Like a lot of things in this era of wrestling, if the WWF and ECW were having success with it, WCW was going to do their own version that was worse. Now, around this time, spring 1999, WCW was stockpiling a lot of former ECW stars. Off the top of my head, you had Mikey Whipwreck, Hack, Bam Bam Bigelow. Raven had been around for a couple of years. Shane Douglas was about to start with the company. You know, just like half of the ECW main event scene from the year before was now gainfully employed in Turnerland. Not Gainesville fully employed, because they were based out of Atlanta. That's another town in Georgia. So that spring, all the old ECW guys started having these hardcore matches. Prove who's the king of hardcore. Specifically Raven, Hack, and Bam Bam would have these like really good hardcore matches on pay-per-views. And to reward them, WCW wanted to start a hardcore division. Except Raven saw the writing on the wall and immediately latched onto Perry Saturn to do a tag team because he didn't want to be a hardcore guy. Bam Bam Bigelow did the same. He was thrown a life preserver by Diamond Dallas Page to form the Jersey Triad with Canyon because he didn't want to be falling through tables all the damn time. Things became kind of official that July when it was conceptualized. Bash at the Beach 1999. What if we took all of the guys low on the card and we threw them all in a junkyard and we had them just do a lot of things, and the winner would get whatever the fuck this is? They said it was a trophy. It looked more like that thing in Legends of the Hidden Temple, that level that like nobody could ever figure out because like you had to put like the monkey's arms in the head. It kind of looked like that if you were trying to make it at home. But that wasn't the only problem with the junkyard match, of course. It's kind of infamous. Unlike the WWF pre-tapes where they did walkthroughs and brought lights, WCW's production team was like, just have wrestlers show up. We'll figure it out. And so they did a shoot at nighttime at a junkyard where wrestlers were not told, hey, here's where a camera's going to be. Here's where the lights are. Just let us know when you're going to do your spot so we can show it the best to the audience. No, just do all your shit. We'll try to catch it. And what happened was half the roster got injured in that match. And we didn't see almost any of those injuries because there was like 20 guys flying around everywhere. And somehow from this mess, Fit Finlay came out, the king of the hardcores, the initial WCW hardcore champion. Okay, Fit, we know that you're like one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, but you're going to start having bullshit hardcore matches with tables and trash cans and stuff. Have at it. Except at a house show that Finlay has a hardcore match. They set up a table in a corner. Finlay gets thrown through it, and a part of the table goes up into Fit Finlay's leg and like stabs through it. It kind of changes the course of his career because they had to have bullshit hardcore matches on WCW shows because the WWF was doing it, brother. And so Fit Finlay has to relinquish this hardcore title that nobody was really clamoring for him to have anyway. They didn't have a fun way or a creative way to get it off of him. They were just like, we don't know what we're doing. He got stabbed by a table. And so the thing gets put on ice for a few months. While Eric Bischoff leaves his post in the company, goes home to Wyoming, goes fishing for a while, and the interim booking team's like, we don't really want to be doing this crap. And then that October, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara jumped from the WWF, and if there's one thing that Vince Russo loved, it was copying his own ideas from the WWF. So within weeks of him getting the book in WCW, they announce a hardcore division, little more official than what they were doing in the summer, where it was just like Hugh Morris and Brian Knobbs and the British guys. They announced a tournament to conclude at Mayhem 1999, a little mini tournament, a little baby tournament, little tournament like this. They'd already been having a 32-person world title tournament. And here's the thing about Vince Russo I've never understood. Dude like hates wrestling, right? He hates like people getting in a ring and wrestling. He loves tournaments. He is horny for tournaments. Like those people that are lactose intolerant but can't stop themselves from eating like cheese pizza. Anyway, this little baby tournament, Norman Smiley, who in this time period became Screamin' Norman with the local team uniforms and the being afraid of hardcore matches, even though that's all he's getting booked in. He beats somehow both Ming and Barbarian because, it'd be funny if he did, because he's a big scaredy cat. Brian Knobbs pulls off a first. He defeats Bam Bam Bigelow in a hardcore match by countout. Norman beats Knobbs in the finals at Mayhem because, well, it's funny when the scared guy wins the hardcore match. Same gag every week. He doesn't want to be doing hardcore wrestling because it hurts, but he keeps falling into victories. By the way, side note, when they brought back the hardcore division, WCW had an actual title belt created because I imagine traveling with that trophy would be such a headache. They had a belt commissioned, and this is what the belt looked like. I imagine the directions to the belt creator were like, hey, take the ECW belt and make it look like a bird shit on it. So after Russo gets sent home in January, Brian Knobbs wins the hardcore title from Norman Smiley because, well, it's been 2 months. The joke's not funny anymore. And then the next month, for the first of multiple times, the hardcore belt goes to a group of individuals. 3 count. Defeat Brian Knobbs to become the first hardcore Polycule in WCW history. Matches were kind of entertaining because those 3 dudes were willing to do anything to be on the card. Knobbs wins the belt back at Uncensored, but January 10th, Russo and Bischoff both come back, and it's the Great Reset of 2000, where they demand all the belts be handed back to them. Brian Knobbs was having a bad night anyway, because when the pyro went off, all the guys in the New Blood are standing in the ring, and his hair was on fire. And then he has to give his belt back. The poor guy. The next week at Spring Stampede, Norman Smiley involved in the hardcore title situation again, but this time he loses it to Terry Funk. Beyond the Mat had just come out 6 months before this, and I know when you get Terry Funk out in a ring, you can't really control what he's going to do. So he's going to do some crazy, stupid stuff. But in that movie, which everybody in WCW had seen, it had been referenced on television. They were like, Terry, you really should retire. Your knees are rubbing on each other and your brain's mush, and you're going to probably die if you don't stop. Vince Russo saw that and is like, we need you getting hit in the head with weapons every night. That's what we need from you, Mr. Funk. And Terry was like, hell yeah. And herein lies kind of a problem with how ECW guys in general were booked when they went to the bigger 2 companies is it was just assumed by the bookers in the WWF and WCW that because you came from ECW, you just did hardcore wrestling. You did weapon stuff. It was just assumed you were going to because you came from ECW. Because you came from that company, you're a hardcore boy. I get the great hardcore feud, Terry Funk and Norman Smiley. Again, 2 all-time great wrestlers. And the matches were entertaining. They did the best job they could with the situation. And Russo's like, you know what we need to add to this? They need some pizzazz, some Hollywood pizzazz. And so Ralphus for the first time in almost a year, gets brought back to television. And he now becomes Norman Smiley's little old butt crack buddy. And so Terry Funk has multiple matches in WCW where he works spots with Ralphus. And guess what? Terry Funk is the best wrestler ever to ever live. So they were entertaining. Terry Funk loses the belt to Eric Bischoff. He gets to be hardcore just like me. We're hardcore brethren. But then he retires his reign the next night and was like, hey, Mama Lukes, you helped me. You're the hardcore champion now. That's right. That's right, some more hardcore poly business, as Big Veto and Johnny the Bull get to share the belts. But not for long. They're very monogamous when it comes to their hardcore wrestling. They can't do this sharing stuff. So they have a match on Thunder. Big Veto wins the belts. And Veto becomes like the stickball guy. He brings a kendo stick to the ring and they're like, oh, it's because he used to play stickball back in Bentonhurst, which was not where he grew up. It's where Mike Tyson grew up. You think Vince Russo from Long Island would know more than one borough, but maybe he was a latchkey kid, never went outside. It would explain a lot about Vince Russo, quite frankly. A month later, Lance Storm beats Big Veto for the belts. That time that they accidentally booked Lance Storm really, really well when he first came into WCW. They were like, what happens if we let a wrestler win a bunch of matches, he wins some championships, will the crowd take him seriously? This is crazy talk. I don't think it's ever been done, but wouldn't you know, it worked for like a month. Lance Storm actually doesn't lose the title because, again, they were protecting him, which is crazy to do in WCW for someone who didn't need regular prostate exams. And of all people, Lance Storm forfeits the belt to PCO, Pierre Carl Ouellette, who was in WCW for like 2 days. They were in Canada, and they brought in Jacques Rougeau and PCO. Jacques wouldn't do a job for the cat, so he was like, deuces. PCO, they just let go after that week's TV because they claimed he didn't get his paperwork in order to be able to travel to America regularly, which, as he would reply, you guys are a giant corporation. You should be able to do that for me. Norman Smiley beats PCO for the belt so they can write him off TV. And they were going to do a thing with Norman where he has sense in his head and it's like, I don't want to do hardcore wrestling. Here's the belt back. I don't want to do that anymore. Except that the night they were going to do that, he just didn't show up to TV. I don't really know what the story is, but they just didn't show up to the Thunder taping. So new commissioner Mike Sanders is like, hey, we're stripping him of the belt. We're going to do a tournament, which Reno from Nevada won the hardcore title with his sweet Genghis Khan ponytail. November comes, Crowbar wins the belt. Things get kind of weird. I mentioned earlier that WCW loved just copying things that the other companies did. In this case, it was like they were in an E-Fed and they really liked the Terry Funk Mick Foley dynamic in the WWF in like 1998, right before Mick turned heel. There's the mentor-mentee situation. They just start booking Crowbar like he's Mick Foley. They start acting like Crowbar's been like a hardcore guy for like 15 years. And he's been Terry Funk's mentee. Crowbar and Terry Funk feud / are like buddies for a while who hit each other over the head with stuff. Funk won the belt at Starrcade because of all the great moments in Terry Funk's life. He needed a Starrcade moment. All the greats that had their big Starrcade moments like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Oz, Racknaman. And they wanted to keep the Terry Funk Crowbar thing going because it's easy to just be like, hey, this guy is make-believe Mick Foley now. Isn't that easy? But they needed to like add a new flavor to it. So they bring in Meng and his giant hair. Now, Ming at this point had been teaming up with Kwee-Wee. You know that old Tongan stereotype that every man on the island has a queer hairdresser that he just loves and respects? That's kind of what they were going for with those two. Anyway, Ming starts like being Ming and no-selling stuff and being like, whenever anyone would hit him in the head. He won the belt at WCW Sin in January 2001. This was that period where they were renaming the pay-per-views after the 7 Deadly Sins. Of course, Sin is not one of the 7 Deadly Sins. That'd kind of be like if you wanted to, open a restaurant and name it after your favorite meal. So you just called it food. But wouldn't you know, Ming wasn't under contract when this happened. We all know where this is going. At this point, the WWF is so far ahead. You know, they already had the talks in October about buying WCW. People know the company's DOA. The WWF didn't need to do anything to mess with WCW. But they were having fun. They were playing with their food. Someone in the WWF found out that Ming didn't have a contract with WCW. And the Royal Rumble was coming up. And so contact was made, and Ming signed a contract with the World Wrestling Federation. They just wanted to do it because it was funny. And so the night before the Royal Rumble, that Saturday, Ming works an independent show for Harley Race, WLW in Missouri. The Barbarian's also there booked. And he's like, hey, Barb, could you just give this thing to somebody at WCW? I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go over here. I think the belt ended up being given to Nick Patrick somehow. The belt got back. They knew he was going to do it. They knew he was jumping, but he didn't care. He's not under contract. And they're like, hey, you want to make like 6 figures to walk out at the Royal Rumble and go, like, have your hair go rum, 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 rum? Sure, why not? And so that, my friends, was the end of the WCW Hardcore division, because the company died like 7 weeks later. Now that I've done this totally necessary video of the WCW Hardcore title that's eaten up like 15 minutes of your day, please make sure to give a thumbs up, like the video, leave a comment. Did you have any memories of the Hardcore title? I had to look all this stuff up because I totally forgot half of it. Share the video, give it to your mom, be like, hey mom, you want to learn about Ming winning the Hardcore title? And then if there's a hype button there, hype the video. So once again, I'm Tom, that's Mike back there, and I'm starting to get calluses from how hardcore I am. Like, my soft skin is, I need to put on some lotion.